Okay, let's get into audience questions for the week. Some good ones, I must say. I'm impressed with the audience. First question, David, what happens to drug trafficking and the illegal drug trade if all drugs are decriminalized or legalized? So these are really two questions. What happens to drug trafficking with decriminalization is very different than what happens to drug trafficking with legalization. So if we just see decriminalization of drugs in terms of possession, you're not going to see a drastic change to trafficking in that case. The cartels won't really need to change anything in order to continue being profitable. Operationally, I don't think that they would see anything major change, but you would start to maybe see some changes when it comes to American institutions. Maybe at the prison level, you would see some differences, although I don't think they would be as big as some people think. I'm going to get back to that. You would probably see more people suffering from addiction, willing to go and seek treatment because of this word decriminalization. It's no longer a criminal thing. But I think for the most part, from a dealer standpoint, from a cartel standpoint, from a gang standpoint, and we know about the overlap between drugs and gangs, you would see them operating basically the same way they do. Although maybe they would shift a little bit to areas where you could leverage something that is still completely criminal rather than decriminalized, but still not really okay. And remember that when we talk about decriminalization and legalization, we're talking about possession for use. And the idea of even in cases of legalization, you still need to be licensed. I mean, look at cigarettes as an example. Cigarettes, which are legal, you still see a black market for cigarettes. And you still see people trying to pay less for them by obtaining them in ways other than the way that the government has established through regulation should be done. Now, if you actually saw legalization, I think that would take a big bite out of the black market. I think you would see, if there was really full legalization where state government or federal government or both says, as has been done with cannabis in a lot of places already, this is now legal as long as you're licensed to produce and sell it. There are some limits in terms of how much any individual can have or grow, and you need to be 21 and you need to be paying taxes in this way and that type of thing. You would still have a black market, which would likely be cheaper, and you still see that. But it might actually impact the level of violence to some degree. I think that you would actually see a decrease in the amount of violence, but it would be less violence related to the production and distribution of that substance. You would still have gangs and cartels. My expectation would be, if you legalize more and more drugs, you'd see gangs and cartels go in the direction of human trafficking, organ trafficking, extortion, kidnapping, protection. And the sort of example or model for that is look at the United States during alcohol prohibition in the early 20th century. It created a different criminal world. And then when it was re-legalized, it's not like criminality went away. It was a switch. We've seen mafias switch from from alcohol to gambling or prostitution or whatever the case may be. So then let's talk about the prison thing. With decriminalization of personal use amounts alone, I actually am not sure that American prison populations would dramatically decrease. And what I mean by that is the following. Yes, some people do end up in prison simply for possession of personal use drugs. For the most part, like overwhelmingly, people that are in prison for drugs are in prison because they either were involved in the trade and had amounts that are far bigger than what would be decriminalized or legalized. And what we're seeing already at the state level bears this out. Or it's drugs connected to other crimes as well. So I think if you were to legalize, decriminalize, and say everybody in prison simply for a personal possession drug charge is being let out, the U.S. would still be very, very high in terms of per capita incarceration globally. And I don't know that simply decriminalizing or legalizing personal use amounts is actually going to be the big improvement from a criminal justice standpoint, as some people believe that it's going to be. Those are the numbers I found. If you disagree, let me know. One of our sponsors is SteadyMD Primary Care, the easier and more affordable way to do primary care. And they're giving you 50% off because you are in my audience. You just answer a few questions. SteadyMD will match you with a licensed primary care physician that's tailored to your needs. You'll have a 1-hour virtual appointment and start a meaningful relationship with your new doctor. And from then on, your doctor will be available to you by text, phone, and video chat. It's not some random doctor on call. Your SteadyMD doctor has a limited number of patients. You get the attention you deserve, and they can help you with anything your primary care doc normally would. It's very cool how it works. You don't need insurance. It's just $99 a month, no other fees or copays for visits. Take the free quiz and see which doctor is a perfect fit for you. You'll get 50% off your first month when you go to steadymd.com/Pakman. No risk, no long-term commitment. The link is right underneath the video.